Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. TechTrav here, and today I'm going to continue the Proxmox tutorial series by showing you how to do some basic networking in Proxmox, as well as how to get a VM up and running, because I'm sure you're basically watching this just to get to the fun stuff. But first we have to talk about some networking, because who doesn't love networking? So I'm going to go ahead and log into Proxmox here as the root user. And I'm going to go to my host machine, which is PVE01 here. And I'm going to click on Networking under System. Now, networking in Proxmox is pretty easy to understand. You're going to see your physical NICs as well as some virtual ones. Now, these physical ones, which in Proxmox 9 will be called NIC 0, NIC 1, NIC 2, etc. These are your physical network interfaces that are plugged into whatever your network medium is, whether that's an SFP port or, in this case, just gigabit copper. VMBR 0, this is the virtual Linux bridge interface that Proxmox creates during install, and this is the main one that is going to connect to everything, default out of the box. Typically, if Proxmox is living on your network and you have a flat network, no VLANs, you're pretty much ready to go. You don't really have to touch any networking. I just want to come in here because if you do install Proxmox, like let's say from a web hosting provider on a dedicated server, Proxmox is going to create VMBR 0, and that's going to have your Proxmox server's public IP address in it. Now, if you want to create virtual machines, but you don't want those virtual machines, sitting on the network, or on the internet rather, a good example would be you have a Windows 11 workstation that you just want to use for management. Nothing running on it. The public doesn't need to access it. Well, in order for that to get out to the internet, you're going to have a virtual firewall. And in order for that virtual firewall to get your internal traffic to the outside world, you kind of have to have another network. And if I'm starting to make some sense here, basically what I'm explaining is a small home network or a small business network. You have this connection right here, VMBR 0, which if this was, sitting in a data center, this would be your WAN connection from your ISP. And then what you need to do is bring along a router. Well, your router supplies the internal connection. So you just plug the WAN connection to your router and then your router into other devices, probably a switch. So your other computers and devices can connect to the internet. Well, same thing here. What you would end up doing is click on Create Linux Bridge. Just keep it VMBR1 for simplicity. And literally just hit create and apply, and that's it. So I'll hit create, and then we're going to click on apply configuration. And now I have a network interface that is internal to Proxmox, right? So anything that I connect to VMBR1 is going to stay inside. Anything VMBR 0 is outside. So if I installed a virtual firewall, I could then add VMBR 0 and VMBR 1 to that virtual firewall, and that virtual firewall would bridge the gap between my outside network and my inside network. And again, this works just like your house. There are NAT rules, and your and the IP address that you give to your virtual firewall is what all those devices will use. So very simple, and that's why I just wanted to quickly touch on networking here. I'm going to leave VMBR in here for now, and I'm going to show you how you can set virtual machines to have different network connections. So right now, VMBR1 is literally just a host-only network adapter. So if you're coming from the VMware world, this is just a host interface or a virtual switch that's only available to the host. So just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and actually create a virtual machine. Now I've taken the liberty and installed a few ISO images on here. I have Windows 11 and I have Alma Linux 9. You can easily download an ISO just by pasting in the URL to download, hit query, and it will download it right to your local storage. Otherwise, you can upload it from your local computer. Just click on upload, select the file, and upload it, and Proxmox will put it in place. We'll talk about containers in a different video. Today, I just want to talk about pure KVM virtual machines because that's going to be the most useful type of VM that you're going to create. So in order to create a VM, I'm going to just click back on the host node here, and we're going to click on Create VM. So Proxmox is designed to kind of work in a clustered environment, but it also works standalone, and a lot of these features are going to be pretty much for clusters. The two main ones that we're going to focus on for now is VM ID and name. So every VM needs to have a unique ID, and this is how Proxmox keeps track of, hard disks and network adapters and all the other virtual hardware. So this ID is arbitrary, doesn't mean anything, but the minimum you can have is 100 and the maximum 999,999,999. Okay, one less 9. So this is 999,999 million. So there you go. That's the maximum number that you can have. How you ID things is up to you. Some people like to, reserve blocks of IDs. So for example, we'll say 100 through 199 is development. 200 to 299, that's production. 900 to 999, those are my templates. So it's however you want to do it. The only thing is that VM IDs just have to be unique within a cluster. Now we're going to give our VM a name. So names have to follow some rules too in Proxmox. For example, they cannot start with a special character such as underscore or a dash. They also cannot start, well, actually they can start with a number. So you can do lowercase, uppercase numbers and some special characters. So like I can call a virtual machine, we'll install Windows 11. So I'm just going to call it Win11-test. That's an appropriate name. Windows 11 is an appropriate name. Windows 11 dash is not. Windows 11 underscore is not. But you can kind of name things how you want. I like to name things based on the host name, but you can go crazy with the names, whatever makes sense to you. Like sometimes you might want to label things prod Win11. Or you might go test Win11. So you can have all caps, lowercase. It's kind of up to you. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to leave this as test Win11. So we'll click on next. So now we need to add our ISO image. So in this case, my storage, because I'm keeping things simple here, I have my ISO uploaded to my local storage. I'm just going to click on the down arrow here, and we're going to click on the ISO image, which is this ugly name here, ENUS Windows 11. Now it's important that we switch the guest OS type. What we're doing here is we're telling Proxmox what type of VM this is and to customize the hardware and some of the settings based on the version of the operating system. So in this case, it's going to go to Windows 11, 2022, 2025. Now, if this was Windows XP, I would come back here and select Windows XP. If it was Windows 10, 2016, 2019, you'd select that and so on. But we'll just leave it as Windows 11. Under System, now because Windows 11 does require UEFI to boot, we need to provide some storage for EFI. I like to keep these disks with my disks, but at the same time, I like to keep them on non-critical storage. So in this case, because these disks are really small, I'm just going to stick it on local LVM. and we're going to make sure that our pre-enroll keys is selected. Under TPM, because we need a TPM, same thing, local LVM is fine. And remember, we're installing Windows 11, so it needs to be at least version 2. We're going to go over to our disks. Now, right out of the box, this is where Proxmox differs. Because it's using QEMU virtualization and KVM virtualization, anything like VirtIO and SCSI, Windows does not have drivers for. Now, your Linux systems do have drivers for those. Most Linux distros do. But Windows, it's going to default to IDE. Now, for those of you who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, if you remember, IDE was slow. So your performance is going to be really bad if you select IDE. Obviously, you would prefer to install VirtIO or SCSI. I'm going to cover this in a later video. Right now, we're just hitting the basics. So do yourself a favor, switch this over to SATA. You're going to thank me. Now, storage. If you recall from the previous video, I created 2 different types of storage. I have hard drive and I have SSD because this server has both. Obviously, I have more hard drive storage than I do SSD, but this is Windows 11. It's going to be something that I'm going to use quite a bit. I'm going to want it on my faster SSD storage. We're going to click on discard. This will help improve your performance. And our disk size, obviously 32 gigs is way too small. We're going to give it 150 gigs for now. Now, something else that you need to do, at least on this screen, is tick this advanced box and click on SSD emulation. If you do not click this and you put it on SSD storage, KVM is going to assume that it is a hard drive. Hard drives and SSDs are written to differently. KVM is going to present to Windows a virtual hard disk, and Windows is going to say, oh, this is a hard drive. I'm going to write to it like I would a physical hard drive, because to Windows, it doesn't know, nor does it care. If you click SSD emulation, what you're doing is KVM is going to present to Windows an SSD. Windows is going to say, hey, I'm writing to an SSD. I need to write randomly, so I'm not wearing out this SSD, because you're not supposed to write to an SSD the same way you write to a hard drive. Because hard drives are slower, you want to have all that data together. Because SSDs are, electronics that can wear out by writing to them sequentially, you need to randomize it. So click on SSD emulation, and Windows will say, hey, I have an SSD. At this point, click on Next, and you can uncheck this advanced because we're not going to talk about this stuff yet. When we get to the CPU tab, sockets. This is a legacy setting. You don't need to change your number of sockets. Instead, change the number of cores. I'm going to go ahead and give Windows 8 cores. Now the type. Because we're installing Windows 11, and Windows 11 is picky about the CPU, I'm going to leave this as the default, x86-64 V2 AES. On some operating systems, like Alma Linux 10, you're going to want to change this to host, especially if you have an older CPU. If you have a newer CPU, it's fine. But some drivers changed in Enterprise Linux 10, and it's just a mess. You'll get kernel panics. You would set that to host. But since we're doing Windows 11 on this one, we're just going to leave it as default. And most Linux distributions will be happy with the default. It's just some of the newer stuff. So if you're going to install Enterprise Linux 10, you're going to want to change this to your host. Once we have this set, we'll click on Next and we'll go to the memory. So if you're used to most applications, they like to say 1,000 megabytes. is equal to 1 gigabyte. Proxmox actually works in reality, and 1024 is equal to 1 gigabyte. So that means 4096 is 4 gigs of memory. If you want 8 gigs, this would be 8192. Well, not that, it would be 8192. If you want 16, it'd be 16384. Did I do my math right? I think I did my math right. So I want 16 gigs on this, so I'm going to set it to 16 gigs. We'll click on Next. Network configuration. By default, your bridge is going to set to VMBR0, and this is going to depend on your configuration. So if you're installing this in a data center environment where Proxmox is living on the public internet, you may want to set this to VMBR1 and let your virtual firewall handle the internal to external networking and translation. If you're installing this on your home network, you don't have any VLANs configured, VMBR0 is fine. In this example, I'm going to set it to VMBR0 because I have DHCP running on my home network on that VLAN that the server's connected to. So that's going to be the best option, especially because Windows 11 wants to have a network connection. For a network adapter for Windows, the Intel E1000 is a good card. If we were going to install the drivers, we would change this over to VirtIO, but for simplicity, we're just going to leave this at the Intel E1000. And this is a decent basic card or virtual network interface card that you can use in most virtual machines. For Windows, this one's a pretty decent one. Now, obviously, like I said, once we get into some of the more advanced stuff, we'll switch this over to VirtIO. But for right now, Windows doesn't have the VirtIO drivers, so we're just going to leave it as the Intel E1000. Once we click on Next, we are going to be taken to our confirmation screen. We're going to see everything that Proxmox is going to create for this virtual machine. So click on Finish. We're going to see it pop up here in our side menu. It's still being created. Did I give this a name? Yes, I did. For some reason, the name's just... Oh, there we go. See, I worked too fast. Once the name pops up, you're pretty much ready to go. At this point, to install Windows, you'll notice that the machine is powered off. Well, to install it, we have to turn it on. And that's as easy as clicking the Start button. Now, because Windows has some extra stuff, like you have to press a key before it will load the ISO, I'm going to click on Console and drag over my console window. You'll see that it says that the guest is not running, so I'm going to click Start Now. It's going to initialize and press any key. All right. So now, if I move my mouse out of the way, this is going to look like a regular Windows computer booting. You'll see we have the Proxmox logo and the Windows loading symbol. And there we go. There's our Windows 11 setup. So now I'm just going to run through this real quick. And once it's done, I'll show you how Windows works. All right, I just want to interrupt here real quick. If you do not see any disks here, that means you selected an option that Windows does not have the drivers for. I'll show you how to fix that, but in the meantime, go back and fix your driver or your disk selection to make sure that you selected a SATA bus. Once you do that, you may have to restart your virtual machine, and then you'll see, you should, when you get to the screen, see your unallocated disk space. So in this case, here's my 150 gig disk that I'm going to All right, guys, welcome back. I have not installed Windows 11 before. Wow, that was painful. I should have installed Linux. That was ridiculous. Um, but anyways, yeah, you can see now we have Windows 11 up and running. If I open up Edge here, which is probably a mistake. There we are. We're on the internet. We're good to go. We open up. I mean, obviously this is a clean install, so there's nothing here. But there you go. We now have a Windows 11 virtual machine that we can use. Um, wow, that install was terrible. How do people use Windows 11? Oh, okay. I'm actually kind of speechless. The last Windows install I did was like Windows 10, and obviously my main workstation is a Mac. So wow, that is just awful. Anyways, that is how you get a virtual machine up and running. So now if we just close out of this window, you can see what we have going on here. So this is the metrics of the machine, of the VM. Right now, it says it's using 100% of the CPU, actually a little bit more than 100% of the CPU. You can see the memory is just pegged out at 16 gigs. This is because we're actually kind of doing a disservice to Windows here. But again, I'm going to go over some of the more advanced stuff. This doesn't happen on Linux because Linux actually has the drivers installed, but this is pretty common for Windows. You can get all your stats on the VM here. Wow, that was just bad. I'm just sorry. I am getting off track because I am just taken back at how horrible Windows 11 is. So, anyways, now you have a VM that is up and running and you are ready to rock and roll. The process is basically the same for other VMs. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe. There's going to be some more Proxmox videos coming soon. And thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.